Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Sethum and welcome back to another video guide. I'm once again in Valheim, and in this video folks I'm going to show you how to turn this Greydwarf spawner into a farm. And this will be a farm that will generate wood, resin, stone and all of the other pieces that the Greydwarfs drop when they die. So obviously this implies that you be prepared to deal with the Greydwarfs. Now of course these can be found in the Black Forest, and before we start we need to place down a workbench. This will allow us to craft stuff and create a base in this area, a base so to speak. Of course you can build a base around it, and I strongly suggest that you do that because this will generate a ton of resources. Next thing that we'll need to do is we'll need to place down campfires. Notice that the moment I placed down the campfire, the Greydwarf just basically decided to pull a runner. So they don't really like the campfires and they do seem to be afraid of it. Now what I'm doing right here is I'm placing the campfires wrong, so I can show you exactly why it's wrong. So what happens is when the Greydwarfs spawn, they will spawn on top of the campfires, and basically they will catch fire and take damage, potentially die. Now if you get a 2-star Greydwarf or a brute, they won't fully catch fire, they won't fully die is what I meant to say. So what we want to do is we want to place the campfires at a campfire distance between the spawner and our campfire. So that's basically the perfect distance. So what this will do is it will create a corridor between the campfires that we're placing down and the spawner, and the Greydwarfs won't want to go through the fires. So that's quite important. This is what we're going to take advantage of. So basically I'm just going around. As you can see, I'm removing the old campfires and then placing down the new ones at the distance that I mentioned before. So we're just going to surround the spawner. Now one important thing to remember here is the element of rain. So obviously if it will start raining, the campfires will be doused, and so therefore the Greydwarfs can then come out. So be very careful with that. I know that there won't be any rain coming anytime soon because there was a storm not long ago. So that's basically when I decided to place these down. So I did have to wait for that to finish. Now once you place down the campfires, deal with the stragglers, get rid of them. You don't want them complicating the situation here, the build. I'll just quickly pick up all these wonderful resources that they drop, although there's not many of them. And you're probably wondering how many resources can this actually generate, and I can tell you it will generate a huge amount. I would even actually advise that you build a base around this. I wish I'd known about this when I started building a base. I already have one here in this region, so I don't really need to do that anymore. Now of course for this you will need a couple of things. You will need to have defeated Ichthir, as you will need a pick of some sort to dig around. Of course you will need an axe and a hoe, as well as the hammer to build a base. So these are the requirements. Of course you can do this as early as you want, but if you're going to go in very early, do be prepared to die a couple of times. So maybe set down a fob with a spawning bed and stuff like that, because the Greydwarfs at the start of it can be quite difficult. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to dig a hole all the way around these campfires. Now I'm going to go as deep as I can. This actually helps in several ways, in the way that in the sense that NPCs in this game don't really want to fall down trenches, so it will create a trench-like structure where any external NPCs won't really want to get close to the dwarf spawner. So basically that protects the dwarf spawner, but it also protects us as well if we do get trolls and stuff like that. So it's quite important, because obviously in the Black Forest we can get trolls. So obviously I'm going to start working on this, which will take some time. I will make some cuts. I'm not going to make the whole video or show every detail of the build, but I will talk you through what I've done and why I've done it and how it works. Okay, so here we are basically with a fairly deep trench, I would say. Now what I'm doing is I am basically digging the center of the trench, and as I do that, notice resources will be falling. Sometimes you will get some Greydwarfs falling, so be prepared to deal with them. The brutes are the worst. Of course I have plenty of armor and stuff, but if you are struggling with the brutes, what I would then suggest is, of course, just jump out of the trench, use a bow and just start peppering them with arrows. Now as I start removing some of the stone, I will start placing campfires in a circle, basically mimicking what is at the top. I do want to create a gap between the dwarf spawner and the campfires, so basically I'm just trying to reproduce what is up there. I will be removing the campfires at the top, so basically grey dwarfs will fall into the campfires. Some may die, others may not. The worst ones, to be fairly honest, are the grey dwarf brutes, so be prepared for that. As I said, the best solution for them, if you're doing this early on, is to basically sprint up the edge of the trench that we've just made and jump, and then basically that's how you get over vertical surfaces in this game. Once you're at the top, use your bow and then start filling the grey dwarfs that got through with arrows. And that's basically the plan going forward. This will take a bit of time. We're going to level out the area just for good measure. So we'll do this. Now, of course, you can go deeper than this if you want to. So here we are. I slowly basically made my way down. As you can see, there's some grey dwarfs that have already died out, and there's like a little pillar there that is still holding the grey dwarf spawner, so keep that in mind. But as you can see, if I want to now, I can start generating all the resources that the grey dwarfs drop. What I'm going to do is I'm just basically going to place some random campfires in the center of the circle just to do some more damage to them, like so. Now what's nice about the campfires is that, of course, a piece of wood, I was just looking at what was going on in the background, one piece of wood will burn for a very long time, and so it does require a total of 10 pieces of wood. Now we got there a shaman, which is probably going to complicate stuff because he does have a bit of range on that attack. I'm just having a look at what he's doing. He's not really being able to hit me right now, so that's actually quite good. I'm going to try and place some more campfires in the center just so that I damage the grey dwarfs. So I suggest you do that because this will generate some resources as you continue building. When you're finished with that, what you want to do is you want to place down some of these wooden beams. We are going to encircle them. Notice that that guy just basically died from the campfires. Now we're going to go with the circle. It's going to be a rough shape because obviously I didn't measure it, and we're doing this live with the grey dwarfs, kind of complicating situations from time to time, so it's not going to be a perfect circle, but don't worry about that. It doesn't need to be a perfect circle. Now if you end up in a scenario like this where the beams just fall down, you want to basically select one of these half beams going upwards. That will act as the support, so we'll just place it underneath the vertical beams, horizontal beams, because vertical is going upwards. So yeah, so we'll place it underneath the horizontal beams, and then we just continue building the... Whoop. Is that guy going to bother us? No, he's not. He's dead. So we'll just basically encircle this. Once we do that, we will then place some vertical beams in the joints of where the beams meet up. And then that will allow us to fully enclose this so that the grey dwarfs cannot come out here anymore. So we'll do this as I was saying, going with the vertical beams. I'm just going to try and orientate them so that they look at least half decent when I place them down. It's up to you how much detail you want to add to this build. I'm just doing this for illustration purposes, to be fairly honest with you. So we'll do this. It doesn't necessarily mean that things will be perfect, as you will see in a bit when we get to the end. So for example, I do have a bit of a gap, but it's nothing to worry about, because the grey dwarfs cannot get through it, and that is what we are aiming for. So we'll try and repair some of the bits and pieces that they have damaged. Sometimes they will hit the campfires. So over here, for example, as you can see, there's a bit of a gap there, and it doesn't really matter. It's not all that important. As you can see, the farm is already working for us. It's starting to generate resources as the grey dwarfs spawn into the campfires. So I'm just having a look around here. So we're just going to keep going upwards with these beams. After that, we are going to place down door frames. Oh, that's not really perfectly placed there, so I'll have to remove that. But this will allow us to keep the grey dwarfs in the campfires that we've placed them down in, and it will also allow us access in the center right there, which will of course mean that we can refuel the campfires, and of course loot all the resources that the Grey Dwarfs have dropped for us. I'll quickly pick these up. And as you can see, they're continuously dying. There's already a ton of resources as we are doing this, which is quite good. Now going upwards, if you want, you can also add some walls just for good measure, but this should be sufficient. But if you're not happy with it, of course, you can always add a bit more height to your building. Of course, we're going to have to go all the way up with this building because we will have to encase it in some sort of a roof type of structure that will protect the campfires from rain. So that is quite important. So as I said, I'm just going to go with one wall tall all the way around, and then I will extend the beams height all the way to the top, basically over the Grey Dwarf spawner. This of course will allow us to place some roofs. You can use the building structures as scaffolding to get up there, and then obviously destroy it when you're finished with it. So I'm just kind of showing you what I'm doing right here. Now this isn't a necessary step, but I do think it does help sometimes to kind of funnel in the Grey Dwarfs and kind of keep them in there just in case they decide to glitch through walls. So we'll do that. It doesn't have to be perfect. So once you've done that, I suggest that you start placing down your warehouse, storehouse, whatever you want to call it, your base. Oh, sometimes you might get a wanderer like that. Just get rid of him. So this will be a storehouse for me where I'm going to have loads of chests and I'm going to store all of the stuff that these guys drop. You can make it however way you want it. This is just a shed, a house, a base, whatever you want it to be, you can make it into that. So it's up to you entirely. This isn't really anything mandatory. Alright, I'm going to place down some chests here, and this is where I'm going to store all of the stuff that these guys drop, like this. Of course, you can go larger, you can make whatever shape and design you want. This is just for basic illustration here. And now this will allow us to store all the resources that we already are getting from this particular farm. Now do bear in mind, you will need many more chests than this because you will run out of inventory space really quickly. Alright, so this is what the finished product looks like. I'm going to talk you through the final pieces. So notice that I went with the pillars all the way up. I did destroy the centerpiece that was quote-unquote supporting the dwarf spawner, and it's not falling down. So as you can see, it's still floating up there, which is kind of good because the dwarf spawns are taking place on the ground. Now in here we still have plenty of campfires, and as you can see, it's continuously spawning in the Grey Dwarfs, which are running across the campfires and basically killing themselves, and as they die they generate resources which we can then pick up. So let me explain to you what happened down there, how I designed this. So this is basically a circle of campfires going there, and then basically a cross or plus symbol of campfires that generates, basically leaves a corner where that dwarf is there, but you can always place down some campfires there just to cover that ground as well, and then basically anything that spawns in here will eventually die. Now on top over here we went with the beams all the way up. It's up to you how far up you go with it, but I would want to go above the dwarf spawner. Over here, as you can see, this was the initial size of this ring, but I decided to go outwards a bit more because the dwarfs did sometimes spawn outside it, so that kind of stops them from doing that. So of course you will need to make certain adjustments here and there as necessary. Now it's not a perfect circle, but over here we went with the ceiling with the roofs right there in a circle. We did leave the center open because, and this is quite important, you do want to leave the center open. Now I noticed that I can of course close the center with the roofs, but what happens is it significantly decreases the rate of the spawns for the Grey Dwarfs. So that means it will still spawn Grey Dwarfs but far slower, whereas if there's an opening at the top, the spawner will continue spawning the Grey Dwarfs at its normal speed, which is slightly faster, not by much, but if you think about it in the long run, this is about being efficient. I don't really know how this works and why it works that way, to be fairly honest. Maybe the spawner doesn't want to be enclosed in a structure, so maybe that's why it's like that. But by putting the roofs on the outer edge. That does protect the outer ring of fire, so there's still a chance of those being protected in a storm. Now, the other thing I did is I did raise the ground with the hole all the way around, so that'll keep anything from coming in and disrupting the farm. So that includes trolls as well. And that is pretty much it. Now, this will generate a ton of resources, so be prepared, because you will be running out of space in inventory pretty quickly, and it passively just generates resources for you. All you need to do is just top up the campfires with wood. One wood, as you will know, will burn for a very long time. And the other thing I strongly suggest is that you build your base around this, because this will passively generate all the important materials like wood and stone for you. So I wish I kind of knew about this well in advance, because that's what I would have done in my gameplay. With that being said and done, that is pretty much it for this video, folks. I do hope that you have enjoyed it and found it useful and informative. If you have, please don't forget to support me and the channel by hitting that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already for more similar content from myself. And if you have just subscribed, why not check out some of my other videos and guides here on this channel? Who knows, you might just enjoy them. And of course, for those interested, you can always find me on the Sethopia Discord. Links to this, of course, you can find down below in the video's description. Until next time, stay safe, folks.